Hello, Don Schmidt, the Book Kahuna, coming at you with today's publishing tip for the day. Today on Pub Talk, I had a really great conversation with Faith Young, the author of What Would Faith Do? Also, she's a radio personality on Velocity Radio, so you can look her up on there. And also, she's a realtor here in the Denver metro area. So without further ado, I'd just like to turn it over to myself with the beginning of my interview on Google Hangouts today with Faith Young. What would faith do? Thank you. Hello all, this is Don Schmidt, the Book Kahuna, coming at you today with another edition of Pub Talk. And today we have a special guest. My guest is Faith Young, who is the author of the book, What Would Faith Do? She's also a Velocity Radio personality, and in her spare time or in her regular time, she's also a realtor. So for now, I'm going to turn it over to Faith and let her give you a little background on what she's up to and where we're going, and we're going to have a little pub talk here. So thank you for coming on, Faith.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm honored. Thank you. And yes, I love what I do. I get to help people in many ways. I am an award-winning real estate agent with Coldwell Banker in the top 9 percentile of all agents nationwide. And I am blessed. I wrote my book, What Would Faith Do? It came out in November, and it has blessed me in many, many ways. All our listeners can get a copy of my book on Amazon. And it's also on Kindle, and you can get it on your iPad as well. And as a result, I was also offered to do my own radio show, and that started in December. And like you mentioned, Dawn, that it's on velocityradio.fm. And that is the largest internet radio station in the nation. We have over 50 live hours a week, and my show is the 3rd most popular show on the station.
Very good. And you just started doing your show not too long ago, so that's great as far as having, an audience pick up on it like that.
Absolutely, thank you. I mean, it really was because of all my sphere, like all the people. Connection is my gift. It's really easy for me to connect with people and to create connections, and I had this huge following that I brought with me when I created my radio show, and actually on the 5th show, after 5 weeks, my show bumped up to number 3.
Wow, that's really great.
Thank you.
And that also gives you an opportunity to talk about a lot of the things that you're passionate about. And so, I guess fill us in. What were the fundamental cornerstones of like why you decided to write your book?
Exactly. What would faith do, right?
Right. What would faith do, and why would faith do what faith did?
So my whole life, as a little kid, I always knew there was something more, and I'm sure our listeners can relate to that. Like, there's got to be more than this, right? And so in my life, I just knew there was something more. And in my book, I talk about what really put me on the path of where I am today. And I had, as little as 1 week before my car accident, this was when I was 18, I said, hey, if I end up in the ER, who's going to even show up, who's even going to care, let alone show up? And sure enough, a week later, I find myself rolling my Bronco 3.5 times. Wow. And when I find myself, yes, seriously. So, and the accident was really traumatic. When the sheriff of the fire department showed up, he's like, you came out of that. Is there someone else inside dead? Because that's how messed up my Bronco was. Fortunately, I just had to have I had knee surgery and so on and so forth. But when I was headed to the ER, I realized, oh my gosh, my life thus far had been negativity, scarcity, and nothing positive. It was just a very, I was a product of my environment. And what I had realized, right then on the way to the ER, like, oh my God, my thoughts created this. And I thought right then, I'm like, if this much negativity could cause this much pain, imagine what this much positivity could create. And I literally changed my path, my course in my life right then. And I realized we had choice, and I every day just started gradually learning how to think more positive than what I had done thus far in my life.
So you weren't necessarily a negative person. It was just the fact that the adversity put you in a situation where you thought more about how to have a more positive influence and draw that energy towards you.
Right. It was like I took ownership instead of blame. So often when people win a door prize or they win a lotto ticket, right? They're like, oh, look what I did, right? But the second they have a flat tire, they're like, oh, look what you did. You left the nails on the road, or why didn't so and so, put the air in my tire, whatever. They don't take ownership, right? When something
Right.
bad happens. But what I discovered is your thoughts create your life regardless. And when you take ownership of that, then you have a choice how you show up, a choice on what thoughts you choose, and a choice on what path you continue. And so later on in life, I hired a life coach, and he literally said, I paid him $5,000 to be my coach, and he says to me, oh my gosh, Faith, you put things in such simple words. You've changed my life. You should write a book. And I was like, huh, okay, I will. So that is exactly where my book came from, because I have a gift, if you will, of putting things into simple terms that people can understand. So my book has real life stories and tools that you can implement immediately in your life.
Now, while you were going through the process of doing your book, did you like the process of writing a book? Did you like going through, and making sure that everything was set up correctly and going through the process of proofing and seeing what you needed to change or anything? Or how did you find that process, and how did you pick the cover for your book and things like
Yeah.
that? Did you have input on that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Input in everything, all the way down to the font. I hired people to implement everything. I graduated from arts college, so I have a degree in advertising graphic design. So I'm a person who knows exactly what I want, and I always say, do what you do best and hire the people to do the rest. So that's what I did with a lot of my book is, I paid my editor a lot of money. She was absolutely phenomenal. And then I hired someone to do my book cover, and I just told him, like, my logo, I created that. I drew that. I hand wrote it. And he just turned it into a digital form so that way it would print better. So the book cover, the image behind my logo, all of that I had chose. He just put it into form for me.
Okay.
And so, like, I knew exactly what I wanted. I had a vision. And what I mean by the font, in my book, on each chapter, where the chapter titles are, is actually my own font. So I have my What Would Faith Do font. That's an actual font that I created out of my handwriting.
So you created the font yourself?
Yeah. So in the chapter titles, each chapter is written with my own handwriting, my own font, which is so cool. People have no idea that I did that. And then secondly, the rest of the words that are readable, because the handwritten font is very more script-like. So it's, not, you don't want the whole book with it, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So the rest of the content is actually two different fonts combined, because it just wasn't perfect. I must have went through 20 or 30 fonts, and then I finally decided, you know what, I need to put two of them together to make it perfect. So that's what I did. So even the actual font is two different fonts combined.
Wow. That's impressive.
So I had a big part in the process, and I feel like, all of that is divine. Like, people read it and they're like, oh, it's so easy to read. I love this font. And I tell them, hey, I created that. I put two fonts together, and people are like, what? So, I believe if you're going to do something, do it 100%. Give it 100% of your all, and put your best product out first. So yeah, it might have took me 9 months to edit my book. It was a perfect birthing process, right? So, but it was worth it. The end results, there's no comparison. So what I would recommend if someone is looking to write their own book is really make sure that the final product is what you want, instead of just getting it out there.
Right.
That's just how I feel because it's a representation of you. And I spent a lot of money creating my book. I would have paid twice as much because that's how completely content I am with my book.
That's great. That's really impressive that you did all that on that.
Thank
Now,
you.
now, you had the adversity with the car accident with the Bronco, but it sounds like your whole book process was not really an adversarial challenge. But
Right.
what other challenges have you faced that really coincided and coalesced into, putting this all together into the things that you're doing now?
That's a beautiful question because yes, actually the writing in the book, creating all of that and all of that wasn't a struggle, but releasing my book was. So I had, and what I mean by that is I had some people who I thought were in my corner were no longer in my corner anymore, and actually encouraged me not to go this route and release it. And it was so releasing my book was probably the most courageous thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Wow, that's so it was a cathartic event for you, and it also had ramifications where you ended up losing people along the way that thought it was not the best idea for you to do.
Absolutely. And at the time it was a huge struggle, like is it worth it? And ultimately, I made sure I had reassurance, made sure this was the right path, and no matter how much resistance, no matter how much questioning I get or belief in not or how authentic I am, it totally completely outweighs the gifts and the thank yous that I have received thus far. So what I've learned, what I teach people is every time you come up against adversity, persevere through it because it's worth it.
That's great. Great words to go by because it's always a learning process, no matter what you
Yeah,
go through.
absolutely. And the most important thing that, I would love for our listeners to take away of my experience and why it's been so phenomenal is because I allow myself to be vulnerable, to experience more love than I've ever experienced in my life.
And in that vein, would you consider that one of your virtues? Because in the book you said everyone has their virtues that they can, um, they can use to their own advantage. And so, is that one of your virtues, or what
Yeah,
would your virtue be that you would, honor, to honor?
Yeah, my two virtues are empowering and faith. So belief, right? And so, it's not by accident or coincidence I was named Faith. I thrive on empowering people and giving people that little ounce of faith that they've been seeking. So one way that I've discovered that I can do that is by being my authentic self and creating that vulnerability. So in my book, I share very intimate stories about my life, and what I've discovered is that's what makes people relatable. So they can relate to the stories, and then they can implement the tools easier because it's on their same playing level. They understand, and they can say, okay, well, she's like me. I guess if she did it, I can do it. So often you have these books that talk about these huge steps and how to believe and all the spiritual stuff, but often it's such on a higher level that it's hard for people to relate. So my book, my intention is to put it in a very simple way that anyone, no matter if you're spiritual or just beginning this path or enlightened, either way you can take away some kind of tidbit and be able to implement it in your life immediately.
It's interesting that you mentioned that about trying to connect more with your audience. I just started a campaign that I'm doing called Naked Blogging,
Wow,
and
awesome.
it's all about no frills, no videos, no just writing about things in my life that have had an impact on where I am now, and I've been told that it's a really great way to connect, and you must have found out. So has that really resonated with people? That, I mean, as far as, do people come up to you and say, hey, I really liked what you said in the book because I have a story that's exactly the same, or how
Yeah,
did that all work out?
absolutely, Don. I've had two people, and one person I mean, I've had two very significant people, significant stories, and one of those stories was she literally says, "I too had this happen to me. I too went through this like you did in your life," and last week I was contemplating suicide,
Oh,
and
wow.
one paragraph in your book shifted everything. So because of my personal stories, she's like, that happened to me too. She was born in the same year I was born, and she had got divorced 5 years ago like I did, and had these other things happen to her like I did when I was a teenager. And so the story is what made it so relatable. So then she said, literally, one paragraph in your book shifted everything. And that's priceless. To know that I had an impact in one person's life is worth any uncomfortableness I might have endured creating this book or anything in the future. It outweighs anything that I might endure.
That's powerful. That's really powerful.
You know,
So
and I believe, if that one person had that experience, there's a dozen others who just aren't saying it, who are sharing it, and maybe the person they share it with has that same experience. And that's my intention, ultimately, to have everyone in the world realize they have that little ounce of faith. I believe in them, so I think with that little ounce of faith, if you give someone a form of belief, then they can start believing in themselves and really shift the path to where what they're meant to do in this world. Because I think we just get knocked off track.
that is true. That is very true. And in that vein, in your book, you talked about the 10 tips for success. Now, would taking one of those tips and sharing them with us, would that be one of the tips to get us back on track?
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is so I have a bonus chapter on business tips, and one of those success tips that I recommend. I talk about the virtues in the book, but I also talk about your sacred gifts. That we all have a gift, and my gift is connection. And so what people's gifts are things that they do easily and effortlessly. Like it's not hard. It just comes to them without effort. So connection is one of them. So what I recommend for a successful tip for whether you're in business, self-employed, or a stay-home mom, is when you meet with anyone. Let's say you're having lunch with a girlfriend or you're on a coffee appointment with a potential client, is to ask them this one question: how can I be a contribution to you?
That's Wow, that's great. That's that throws the whole emphasis back onto the other person, and just solidifies what you're trying to do with everything that revolves around, what would faith do?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And the beautiful thing is why I encourage people to do that, because people already know what I do, right? But how can I be a contribution to you? You never know what that answer might be, right? And so many times people are so thrown off because no one asked them. Instead, they're like, hey, what can you do for me, right?
Right.
That's how you get that a lot. Like, hey, can you buy this product from me? And sometimes I'll get that as a response because they're so naturally in tune to selling me. But the reason why I do that is because you never know. They might say, hey, do you know a plumber by chance? Because maybe that's how you can help them, And so, or I've had it in real estate, someone will say, oh, well, matter of fact, my brother is looking for a house. Can you help him? So it was really powerful to say, how can I be a contribution to you? Instead of saying, do you know anyone buying or selling? That answer might have been no. But since I said, how can I be a contribution, the coolest thing was, one time a client did say, a friend of mine did say, hey, you can help my brother buy a house. So, and sometimes they might not know. So when they don't know, because it's so unusual for people to actually be authentic and ask, how can I help you, is I say, cool, let me know when you do. If you think of something, let me know. And sometimes people will call me and say, remember, Faith, when you said this is how you can help me? And if I can do it, I'll gladly be a contribution. And the natural law of reciprocity is when you give without expectations. Now, if you're doing this with the intention of receiving something in return, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
But the natural law of reciprocity, if you help somebody without any expectations, in return, the odds of them saying, okay, so Faith, how can I be a contribution to you, is more likely to happen.
Interesting. That's a great philosophy. And it kind of reminds me of it was an old Christian Slater movie from like 20 something years ago where he actually worked in a flower shop and he was the delivery person in the flower shop. And the reason why he did that was because no one ever gets mad at the flower guy who brings them flowers.
Right.
So if you're always putting the emphasis on the other person, and you're actually attracting more positivity toward yourself by making sure that you're not the one you're trying to help at any given time. It'll come, but you don't have to be the one who's putting it out there all the time.
Exactly. And I just find that the more you give without expectations, the more the universe gives back to you. So, like, you might be a contribution to these 10 people, and they might never send you anything in return, which is awesome. But this 11th person over here might send you 10 referrals, because that's how it works. It's unfortunately, people think it's instant gratification. I had a acquaintance of mine who bought my book about a month ago, and she goes, "Oh, awesome, Faith! Now that I bought your book, will you do business with me?"
That's not
right. And then, do you want to hear what I said to her? I said,
Go ahead.
yeah, I said, giving with expectations is not giving at all, is it?
No, no.
Right?
Like
So, like, you buy my $20 book and now you expect me to give you business back? That's not how it works. And if you think like that, I actually think it's a scarcity mentality for people who think like that. If you have more than enough abundance, which we all do, we're always taken care of, you would never ask for something in return when you really are giving. And so that's the most important thing, is give without expectations.
Wow. I feel bad that I asked you to do this interview.
Oh, no, don't feel bad. I'm honored. I'm honored.
No, so am I. I'm glad. To tell the audience, we've actually never spoken or met before. This is like the first time.
Yeah,
so,
we got to meet by Google Plus. How cool is that?
Right, and the funny part is, when we were supposed to meet was the time that I blew out my tire on my motorcycle heading on I-25. So when you were talking about blaming the road and the nails in the road and everything, I had that picture of myself trying to get across the all of the lanes to get over to the side by Alameda and Santa Fe, and that just really resonated with me. That no, I didn't blame the road already. I knew I had to check the tires, so it was my fault. So anyway.
Well, you're just taking ownership. You don't necessarily, And the coolest thing, I remember when that happened, I distinctly said to myself, the second you texted me, I said, "Oh my God, I can't make it." And I thought, for some reason he's off track. You weren't meant to be there. So when I talked about being on track earlier, I believe the universe delivers us messages. And what a better way to tell you you're off track than literally knock you off track.
And it did. That was a pretty scary situation, but
yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, I'm glad you were taken care of, but for whatever reason, we weren't supposed to meet that day. We were supposed to meet now. I believe everything is divine timing.
Excellent. And in person eventually I will
Absolutely.
be down to Velocity, so we will definitely meet in person.
Absolutely.
Going off track a little bit from the questions, but I wanted you to maybe kind of give us the overview of how all the different facets like fit together. Like the realtor thing and the radio and the book. Um, was it like a domino effect where one just happened like right after the other, or you must have been a realtor for a while before, and now you've just moved in and finished the book and got that out, and now the radio thing came up. So how does this all like kind of fit together for Faith?
Sure, sure. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I did start real estate about 7 years ago. And what I discovered when I went to write my book and start this process was everything that I've been doing in my real estate business was to set me up for success for this. I mentioned how connection is my gift. So when I got into real estate, I went out networking, and I was going to all these networking events, and they just weren't networking the way I wanted to. It
Okay.
was like not lining up with my morals, and I thought, I know enough people. Why don't I create my own? So I did. The first one I created was Baker Street Networking Event here in the Tech Center. Had that last Thursday every single month for 4 years. Huge success. Huge following. Anywhere from 50 to 75 people every single meeting. I mean, every single event. And then I also, about a year into that, I discovered I need a leads group. I need to create a leads group too, because I naturally give out so many leads. Why not create a leads group that supports each other? So I decided to create a women's leads group, and it's called Wealthy Women Empowering Wealthy Women. And ultimately, by creating that 4.5 years ago, is what put me on the path of where I am today. So it attracted, like attracts like, it attracted women who were making a difference. I had authors like Andrea Constantine, Gayla Wick, Trish Moore, you name it. These people were walking into my leads group as speakers. Angel and Eric, Angel was a guest and from Experience Pros radio show. So really, that's what set me on the path. Even the coach I mentioned to earlier, who I hired, he was a guest at my leads group. So I have this huge sphere of people in my world as a result of all those connections. And so many of them were brought to my world because of those two events. And I literally have my own radio show and my own book as a result of a connection that I connected at my own events. And so the thing about the radio show, you mentioned how do I do all this? The coolest thing about the radio show is I get to share what's important to me. I get to be my authentic self, talk about matters that I think are important, share about things that I love or I desire. And I have a feeling my fans would too. So that hour, my show is every Friday live at 2 p.m. on VelocityRadio.fm. I get to be me. It's fun. It's easy. Before I said yes to doing it, I did some research and I asked my friend who's a PR expert how much she spends an hour, how much time she spends a week for her one of her clients' weekly shows.
Right.
And she said 5 hours a week. And I said, okay, what's the hardest part? She said getting guests on the show. I'm like, guests? That part will be easy. Okay, I'll sign up. And literally people are calling me left and right to be a guest on my show. And so I'm blessed. I get to handpick who I have as guest. I get to spread the word that I feel is important. And I definitely have picked up real estate agents from that. I have my wonderful sponsors that were also part of my sphere. So because of all of I like to call them planting seeds. When you plant seeds and you just let them grow and you nurture them and you give them water and you call them on their birthday and you just write them a handwritten note and all this fun stuff that I've been doing for the last 7 years has just immensely paid off in so many ways.
That's incredible. And the way that everything has all fallen together is really an incredible story as well. Now, are you planning on another book project in the near future, or is that the book and you can't really do anything better than what you've already done? Could there be a What Would Faith Do 2? Or
I love it. I'm positive I'll write another book. My next step right now is to get my 6-disc audio CD out, and I would love to get that done in the next 90 days.
Now, what is the disc CD set going to be on? Is that coaching or empowerment or? Um,
Exactly. It's going to be kind of information out of my book, tool stories that people can listen to while they're driving, while they're working out, because it will be downloadable as well. For them to, it will be very like steps and tools that they can literally implement in their life. There'll definitely be stories as well, so to capture the audience. But it will definitely be very informative. Like those Tony Robbins CDs that everyone has in their cars.
right.
They've listened to 1,000 times. I feel it's going to be the same way, that people are going to just listen to my What Would Faith Do CDs over and over and over again.
Now, in that vein, would the CDs also include a newer or updated version of the 365 Days of Gratitude, or are you sticking with the same 365? It's all about whatever you make that individual gratitude to be.
Yeah, so my 365 Days of Gratitude movement is on Facebook as a fan page, and thank you for mentioning it. I truly believe, my quote is, the more you are grateful, the more life gives you to be grateful for. And gratitude has been a huge tool that I have implemented in the last 3 years of my life, and as a result, I mean, things that I didn't even know were possible are showing up. If someone told me 5 years ago I'd write a book, I would have told them they were crazy. So the gratitude will definitely be in there to remind people to write it. I'm actually going to come out with a little worksheet similar to what Trish Moore has in her book. It's called the Fuel Book. It's going to have, the 10 things I'm grateful for today, my 10 intentions, things I've manifested, like a worksheet, so everyone can download it and use it every single day, like as a notebook or a workbook. So that way they can, I believe if you say something out loud, that's definitely making it happen. But if you write it down, that's solidifying it to the universe that you're serious.
Now, since I'm linked to you on Facebook, I see a lot of your listings of what you're grateful for. But can you kind of give the audience some maybe the top 5 things that you're grateful for over the last few weeks or couple of months, or
sure,
just
absolutely.
So they know the kind of things that you're listing?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones that I posted a couple days ago was, I'm grateful for every single cell in my body.
That is a good one.
Yeah. So, and then, the sunset last night. I bought my new loft in January, and I still am constantly amazed with how amazing the view is from my loft. And the sunset, you probably saw it, last night too. It was absolutely divine. So I'm grateful for the sunset. There's so many. My gratitude list could go on, but really, you be grateful for what you have now. It's the #1 way to bring more into your life. So it's cool because when I post it on Facebook every single day, it's been 2.5 years now that I posted every single day what I'm grateful for. Is what I do know is, even if people don't post what they're grateful for, they will stop and read it and say, oh, I'm grateful for the sunset too. Or when I said about every cell in my body, you're probably like, huh, I should be grateful for that too, right? You just instantly switch your mind to gratitude. And that's what I see as such a blessing, is even though people might not be posting it or sharing it, they are actually taking 1 second to say, I'm grateful too. And that's a movement. That's shifting people's lives. I have a lender friend of mine who read my book, and he's like, Faith, you just reminded me of the things I should have been implementing my whole life. And when he's having a rough day, the lending business, he says, can be kind of difficult. So he goes, when things aren't going right, I just literally say, excuse me, to his business partner. Okay, I need 5 minutes of quiet time. I need to write my gratitude list. So he literally, in the middle of his day, just starts writing down what he's grateful for.
And it changes your whole focus.
Absolutely.
You totally focus on, get rid of the negative and focus on something completely different, and it'll change your attitude.
Without a doubt. How I describe it in my What Would Faith Do book is your brain can only comprehend one feeling at a time. So when you're grateful, you're appreciative and you're thinking of abundance and you know, you're feeling good. You can't think of scarcity and lack of at the same time. So I teach people, when you have something like your motorcycle, right?
Right.
When those things happen, because things do happen in life, is that we don't always have control over, but you do have control over what you do the very next second. So what I recommend is whenever anything like a car accident or anything that knocks you off track, period, even if you just trip in the parking lot, start writing 100 things you're grateful for immediately. Because it's like a spiral effect. You know, when you hear that saying, when you got out of bed on the wrong side, your whole day is messed up. Well, it's so true. So, like, if your motorcycle did this one day, and if you don't check yourself at the door, the next day, you know, something else might happen, and then someone backs into you in the parking lot, and then your check bounces for whatever reason, and you're like, what happened? Because it's a spiral effect. And so I believe gratitude is a positive spiral effect that you can shift that energy so the next day won't repeat what's been happening.
So totally shift yourself from where you were to where you want to be.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great.
And sometimes those lists are hard to write in the heat of the moment, but you can write things like, I'm grateful I'm alive.
That's right.
Right?
Because if the alternative, you're not going to write it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes in the heat of the moment, I've been in situations that I was only able to write 25 things. But let me tell you, by morning, I was in a totally different place than if I hadn't wrote it.
I just finished reading Jeff Olson, The Slight Edge.
I love that book.
And he
totally referenced that book in my book.
He said to do like 3 things every day. And yeah. I'm like, and you're talking about like 25 things. I'm like, wow, 25 things. It'll be like, wow, I'm like the light socket, you know. But I mean, seriously, if you think about it, even if you said, wow, I'm really grateful for the light socket, what do you get from the light socket? It's going to give you the ability to turn the light on and read or work on your computer or do something. So in effect, it may seem like a silly thing, but you really do get some positivity out of the fact that you're grateful that it actually works.
Absolutely. I totally believe in the slight edge. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because the slight edge says the difference between doing one little simple thing every single day for 100 days, will that change your life? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so as a result of my gratitude post, the first year, it was Thanksgiving, and it was coming up, and it was about to be the next Thanksgiving, and for whatever reason, I said, do I want to do this for another year? Let me think about that. So I go to a housewarming party for one of my clients, and my friend who gave me the referral said to everyone at the party, hey guys, do you want to know why I referred Faith Young as the real estate agent? And I said, I'm thinking to myself, I want to know, right? And she goes, I know a lot of real estate agents. The reason why I referred Faith is because of her 365 days of gratitude.
You made a difference.
It was huge. So what I'm saying is that landed me at like a $7,500 check, because I was saying I was grateful for the sunset. I'm grateful for my clients. I have been saying what I was grateful for landed me something that might not have been there otherwise. And that's the slight edge. That's how doing the same thing every single day makes a positive impact, not only in your life, in other people's lives.
Now, you're so positive about everything, and it's amazing, because I'm just getting the enthusiasm. It's just coming through the camera and the video. What other ways can we tap into our abundance and be grateful and unlock our gratitude? What do you have any other ways that the audience could do that?
Absolutely. One sentence that I recommend people say, it's like an affirmation, is this sentence: I'm always taken care of. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we are. I've asked people this many times by saying that, have you ever been homeless? And I've had 2 people say yes. Both of them I asked, did you have a car to sleep in? By chance, both of them did. And I said, see, you were always taken care of. So at the end of the day,
True.
we always are. And if you truly, truly believe that, the worry of not having enough will soon dissipate by realizing we are always taken care of. There's always more than enough. And when you see it, it will start showing up in so many ways.
And the worry is actually what could put you further into staying in the car. So once you give up that worry and lack and scarcity, then you can build and start going in a different direction and being grateful for just the little things that will build on themselves, and the positivity will all come back.
Without a doubt. I have a client right now who has been living in a studio apartment for 15 years, and she's about 60, 65 years old, and every single day she pulls out her hide-a-bed to sleep on it, and every single morning before she goes to work she packs up her hide-a-bed because she only lives in 440 square feet. And she is looking to buy. And the cool thing is her place is worth $20,000 more than she thought, the one she owns now. And to see her face light up, and what I discovered when I said that to her, she goes, but I'm so grateful that I have this place every night, that I have my loft, my studio to come home to. And I said, that's precisely why this opportunity to buy a new place is coming up. Because every day for 15 years, even though it's a lot of physical work she's got to do just to live in her own home, not once did she ever not be appreciative for it.
And that's one of the things too, is a reflection of you. When we first started to communicate, and this was one of the things that really solidified in my mind, that I wanted to find out more about you and get to know you, was that I thanked you for connecting with me, and you said, well, it's all about the laws of attraction. You know, we're meant to be like connected somehow, and I was like, wow, you know, that's really like profound, that, you know, someone who pretty much doesn't really know anything about me or anything like that has picked up that they want to be connected with me in a positive way because of just the way everything is falling together. And
Absolutely.
I thought that was fantastic.
Well, thank you. I remember that conversation because I think I even connected you with somebody else, and you were like, how you don't even know me, but you sent me this connection? I'm like, yeah, of course. That's what I do best. And I just remember how you know, how excited and how grateful you were of that. So then it just wanted me to continue to be connected with you even more because of your appreciation.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. And I know we're coming to the end now. I know you've got to run. I would definitely like to invite you to come on to do Pub Talk, you know, Faith Young Phase 2 sometime in the future.
Sounds fun.
But is there anything that you'd like to leave everyone with, or you know, the website of where they can get your book, or Velocity Radio, or, you know, anything you want to, you know, leave the audience with?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things. One, what you know, you mentioned the positive energy, right? And people sometimes are like, how can she be that positive all the time? So what I do want to share with our listeners is you don't need to drastically change your life overnight. What I believe is just having 51%, so 1 extra percent positive thoughts over negative thoughts will shift your life into a positive direction. It's that slight edge we were just talking about. So you don't need to wake up tomorrow and have 99% positive thoughts, right? I don't even know if that's possible. So I want people to realize, to put this on really simple level, like you just said, those 3 things each day. Just try and have 1 more percent. 1 more positive thought than you had yesterday will automatically shift your life into a positive direction.
That's great, and that's a good way for us to end our conversation here. So I would very much like to thank you for coming on and doing the interview. It's been great, and just talking with you and getting to know you a little better, on a one-on-one. And so we'll end this pub talk here, and
Sounds awesome.
I will
Again, thank
just
you.
I I will just let everyone know that this is Don Schmidt, the Book of Kahuna, with Pub Talk for today. And my guest has been Faith Young, and we will have all of the information about where you can find her book and Velocity Radio and anything that Faith wants to put on this video that will be accessible later on. We'll have it available for you. So thank you again, Faith.
Thank you. Have
Enjoy
a
your
great
weekend.
day.
Take
You
care.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.